Your soulmate overheard someone defending you, and what they discovered about you left them speechless. My beloved child, don't skip. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate recently overheard a conversation they were never supposed to hear, and one sentence changed the way they see you completely. Someone was talking about you when another person suddenly stepped in and defended you. But it wasn't ordinary praise. This person revealed something about your character that your soulmate had quietly wondered about for a long time. They spoke about what you do when nobody is watching, how you remain genuine even when there is nothing to gain, and how you carry certain struggles without turning them into excuses. Your soulmate froze. They had expected to hear a simple opinion about you, but instead, they heard a side of your story that you had never tried to advertise. And that's where everything shifted. Don't skip, because the most surprising part wasn't what was said first. It was the detail that came afterward, the detail that made your soulmate realize they may have misunderstood one of the most important things about you. What happened next stayed in their mind long after the conversation ended. The person defending you explained that people often notice your quietness but fail to understand what is behind it. They revealed that there were moments when you could have chosen the easier path, moments when nobody would have blamed you for walking away, yet you still chose loyalty, patience, and integrity. Your soulmate suddenly started connecting memories. Certain conversations with you made more sense. Certain moments when you seemed distant no longer looked like indifference. They began to understand that some of your silence was never emptiness, it was restraint. Some of your distance was never rejection, it was you protecting what mattered while trying to understand your own feelings. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate then heard one final observation about you, and this was the moment that left them speechless. The person defending you said that you rarely explain how deeply things affect you because you would rather be understood naturally than force anyone to believe your heart is genuine. Your soulmate couldn't shake those words. And now comes the part they weren't prepared for. After hearing all of this, your soulmate didn't simply think differently about you, they started questioning everything they had assumed. They remembered the small things you did without asking for recognition. They remembered how you listened when others only waited for their turn to speak. They remembered the moments when you could have demanded attention but chose dignity instead. Suddenly, the version of you they had created in their mind felt incomplete. Don't skip. Something even bigger is beginning to surface, because that unexpected conversation awakened a realization they had been avoiding. You may be far more important to them than they ever allowed themselves to admit. And once that realization entered their mind, they couldn't push it away. There was one specific memory of you that returned immediately, a moment they had almost forgotten. And when they finally understood what that moment actually meant, their entire emotional picture of you changed. Something your soulmate remembered next made the entire conversation feel almost impossible to ignore. Don't skip, because this is where everything they overheard began connecting to a moment between you that they had completely misunderstood. They remembered a time when you could have explained yourself, proved your intentions, or demanded to be understood, but you didn't. You simply stepped back and allowed your actions to speak for you. At the time, your soulmate wondered why you stayed so quiet. Now they finally understood. You weren't silent because you had nothing to say. You were silent because you refused to turn something genuine into a performance. And when the person defending you unknowingly confirmed that exact side of your personality, your soulmate felt something shift inside them. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They suddenly realized that the quality they had been searching for in someone might have been standing right in front of them all along. The strangest part was that nobody was trying to impress them with this revelation. You weren't even there. That made every word feel more powerful, because your soulmate was hearing about your character when you had absolutely nothing to gain from it. Then came a revelation they couldn't stop replaying. The person defending you explained that you have a rare habit. When you genuinely care about someone, you remember things most people forget. Tiny details. Unspoken emotions. Changes in someone's energy. Moments that seem insignificant to everyone else. Your soulmate instantly remembered occasions when you noticed something about them before they ever mentioned it. Suddenly, those moments didn't feel accidental anymore. Don't skip. They began wondering how many times you had quietly understood them while they were still trying to understand themselves. And that thought left them speechless, because it meant your connection might have been deeper than they realized. They started seeing old memories through completely different eyes. Your pauses had meaning. Your patience had meaning. Even certain moments when you chose not to push closer had meaning. You weren't trying to control the connection. You were giving it room to become real. And now your soulmate was facing a truth they couldn't easily dismiss. Perhaps they hadn't been waiting to discover whether you were special. Perhaps they had been waiting until they were finally ready to recognize what was already there. But there was still one thing they heard that changed the atmosphere completely. Someone quietly said that the strongest thing about you isn't how you appear when everything is going well. It's who you remain when nobody is praising you, choosing you, or noticing what you're carrying. Your soulmate went silent because those words answered a question they had never spoken aloud. They had wondered whether your kindness was temporary, whether your attention was simply a passing moment, whether the connection they felt with you existed only in their imagination. Now they had heard an answer from someone who had no idea those questions even existed. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate walked away from that conversation carrying one thought they could no longer silence. What if I have been looking at this person without truly seeing them? And that question opened something powerful inside them. Because once they began looking back carefully, they noticed a pattern, one so surprising that it could explain why you kept appearing in their thoughts at the most unexpected moments. And what they are beginning to understand about that pattern is far bigger than anything they overheard that day. But what your soulmate discovered next was the part nobody could have prepared them for. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. After walking away from that conversation, they tried to continue their day normally, but their mind kept returning to you. Not because someone had praised you, but because every word they overheard matched something they had already felt without being able to explain. Then one memory surfaced with unbelievable clarity. It was a small moment between you, something that seemed ordinary when it happened. You had noticed a change in them before anyone else did. You didn't interrogate them. You didn't demand an explanation. You simply changed the way you spoke to them, became softer, gave them space, and somehow made them feel understood without forcing them to say anything. Back then, your soulmate barely realized what you were doing. Now that memory felt completely different. They suddenly understood that you had been paying attention to the parts of them most people overlooked. And this realization created a question they couldn't escape: how long had you understood them this deeply? Because if you had noticed those hidden details long before they recognized your importance, then perhaps this connection had been quietly revealing itself for much longer than either of you realized. What made everything even more surprising was the pattern that appeared once they started looking backward. Don't skip, because this is where their perspective changed completely. They remembered how often your presence seemed to arrive at exactly the right emotional moment. When they felt misunderstood, somehow a conversation with you stayed in their mind. When they questioned who genuinely cared, they remembered something small you had done without asking for recognition. When they tried convincing themselves that you were simply another person passing through their life, another memory would surface that made that explanation feel incomplete. And now someone else had defended you without knowing any of this. That was what left your soulmate speechless. They weren't hearing a manufactured version of you. They were hearing confirmation of qualities they had personally witnessed but never fully appreciated. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because your soulmate then realized something even deeper. Perhaps the reason you had affected them so strongly wasn't because you were constantly trying to get their attention. It was the opposite. You had left an impression without forcing one. You had become memorable without demanding to be remembered. And once they understood that, something inside them began changing very quickly. Then came the thought that stopped them completely: what if the person defending you had only revealed the beginning? Your soulmate suddenly became curious about everything they still didn't know about you. They wanted to understand the stories behind your silence, the reasons behind your patience, and the emotions you rarely place into words. But underneath that curiosity was something much bigger: respect. A new kind of respect that made them reconsider every assumption they had ever made about you. Don't skip. They are beginning to realize that they may have judged certain chapters of your story without ever reading what came before them. And now, for the first time, they don't want assumptions. They want truth. They want to understand why your presence feels different, why memories involving you refuse to disappear, and why hearing someone defend you affected them so deeply. Because there is one final detail from that overheard conversation they haven't been able to forget. One sentence was said just before they walked away, and it revealed something about the way you care for people that your soulmate never knew. When they finally connected that sentence to something you once did for them, they understood why this entire conversation had reached them so deeply, and that realization is about to change everything. And then that final sentence returned to your soulmate with a force they could no longer ignore. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The person defending you had said something remarkably simple. When you truly care about someone, you don't always announce it, you show it in the details nobody thinks to notice. That sentence unlocked a memory your soulmate had buried beneath countless ordinary moments. They remembered a time when everyone else seemed focused on what they were saying, but you noticed what they weren't saying. You noticed the pause behind their smile, the hesitation in their voice, the tiny change in their energy. And instead of putting them on the spot, you quietly adjusted your presence. You became more patient. You listened differently. You gave them exactly the kind of space they needed without ever making them feel alone. At the time, they thought it was coincidence. Now they understood that it wasn't. You had seen something beneath the surface, and you cared enough not to make a spectacle of it. Suddenly, your soulmate realized why hearing someone defend you had affected them so deeply. The person wasn't introducing them to a completely different version of you. They were confirming the version your soulmate had already experienced but had never known how to name. What happened inside them after that realization was even bigger. Don't skip, because this is the moment their old assumptions started falling apart one by one. They remembered every time they had questioned whether you cared, only to recognize that your actions had answered the question long before their mind was ready to accept it. They remembered moments when you could have pushed for attention but chose patience. Moments when you could have made everything about yourself but chose to understand them instead. And suddenly they saw the difference between someone who wants to be noticed and someone whose presence naturally becomes unforgettable. That difference was you. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate began wondering whether they had mistaken your calmness for distance, your patience for uncertainty, and your emotional restraint for a lack of feeling. What if the truth was exactly the opposite? What if you had felt more than you showed because you respected the connection too much to force it? That possibility stayed with them. And for the first time, instead of asking, "Does this person really care?" another question appeared: "How did I not recognize this sooner?" That question changed everything, because once your soulmate began seeing you through this new perspective, they couldn't return to the old one. Now the most unexpected shift is happening quietly. Your soulmate isn't only thinking about what they overheard anymore, they're thinking about what they might do with what they discovered. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you, because realizing someone's value and being ready to acknowledge it are two completely different moments, and your soulmate may be moving from the first into the second. They are replaying your conversations differently. They are remembering details they once dismissed. They are noticing how strangely powerful it feels that someone else had to defend you for them to finally understand what your actions had been saying all along. But there is still one unanswered question holding their attention. If you cared enough to understand them so quietly, what else have you been feeling that you never said aloud? That question is becoming impossible for them to ignore. Because somewhere beneath all these memories, your soulmate has begun recognizing an emotion they once tried to explain away. And when they finally admit what that emotion really is, the biggest revelation won't be what someone else discovered about you. It will be what your soulmate has finally discovered about themselves. Now everything your soulmate tried to ignore is beginning to point toward one undeniable realization. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. After replaying that overheard conversation again and again, they finally understood why it affected them differently from ordinary praise. It wasn't simply because someone defended you. It was because every detail awakened something they had already experienced with you. Your soulmate remembered how different your presence felt from people who constantly needed to prove themselves. You never seemed desperate to be understood. You never needed every good thing you did to become a story everyone heard. And strangely, that is exactly what made the truth about you hit harder when it came from somebody else's mouth. Your soulmate realized there were qualities in you they had noticed subconsciously long before that conversation: the way you listened beyond words, the way you remembered tiny details, the way you remained consistent even when there was no immediate reward. Suddenly, moments they once considered ordinary became evidence of something extraordinary. And one thought kept returning stronger each time: maybe they had not failed to notice you. Maybe they had noticed you from the beginning and simply weren't ready to understand why you mattered so much. Then something even more powerful happened: their attention shifted from your actions to their own reactions. Don't skip, because this is where the discovery becomes deeply personal. Your soulmate started asking why your name could change their mood so quickly. Why certain conversations with you remained unusually clear in their memory. Why they could remember expressions on your face, sentences you probably forgot saying, and moments that should have disappeared among hundreds of ordinary days. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They finally recognized that people don't usually remember someone with this level of emotional detail unless that person has reached somewhere deeper than casual attention. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether you had left an impression. The question was why they had spent so long pretending that impression wasn't important. They remembered times when they compared other connections to the feeling they experienced around you without consciously realizing they were doing it. Something always seemed missing. Something felt less natural, less understood, less familiar. Now they knew what that missing piece was. It wasn't perfection they were searching for. It was the rare feeling of being genuinely seen. And somehow, you had given them glimpses of that feeling without ever demanding anything in return. But one final realization is now becoming impossible for your soulmate to avoid. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you, because what they discovered about you has forced them to discover something about themselves. Their feelings may have been growing quietly while their mind kept trying to give those feelings ordinary explanations. They thought they were simply curious about you. But curiosity doesn't usually make someone replay tiny memories late into a quiet moment. They thought they simply respected you. But ordinary respect doesn't make someone's absence feel strangely noticeable. They thought that overheard conversation would eventually leave their mind. Instead, it became the key that unlocked everything they had been refusing to examine. Now your soulmate is standing emotionally somewhere they never expected to reach. They can no longer look at you as casually as before, because once someone recognizes the depth behind a person's actions, it becomes difficult to unsee it. And there is still one question they haven't answered, the question that could change the entire direction of this connection. If they finally stopped hiding from what they feel, what would they want you to know first? The answer has already begun forming inside them, and when it becomes clear, even your soulmate may be surprised by how powerful it is. What your soulmate finally admitted to themselves was far bigger than anything they expected when they first overheard that conversation. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The answer forming inside them wasn't complicated, yet it carried the weight of every memory they had been replaying. They wished they had understood you sooner. Not because they suddenly believed you were perfect, but because they finally recognized how rare it is to meet someone whose character speaks even when they aren't in the room. That was the detail they couldn't escape. You weren't there to defend yourself. You weren't controlling the story. You weren't asking anyone to see you differently. Yet someone who had watched the way you moved through life felt compelled to speak up for you, and everything they said matched the quiet evidence your soulmate had already collected without realizing it. Suddenly, your soulmate understood why certain memories of you had remained so vivid. The smallest moments had carried the biggest truth. The way you listened. The way you noticed. The way you remained yourself when nobody was applauding. And now those memories were no longer separate pieces. They had become one complete picture, and your soulmate couldn't believe how long that picture had been sitting directly in front of them. But the revelation didn't end there, because another question entered their mind and changed the emotional weight of everything. Don't skip, because this is the thought that made them completely reconsider the connection. What if this person eventually stops waiting to be understood? For the first time, your soulmate imagined a future where you simply continued forward without needing their recognition. They imagined you giving your time, attention, and genuine presence to people who immediately understood its value. And something about that possibility made them realize just how much space you had quietly taken inside their thoughts. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate wasn't afraid of losing an imaginary version of you. They were suddenly aware that what made you meaningful was exactly what they had overheard, your ability to remain genuine without constantly proving it. And genuine people don't spend forever convincing others to recognize them. That understanding created urgency inside your soulmate. Not rushed urgency. Not pressure. Something deeper. The awareness that meaningful connections can change when people leave important truths unspoken for too long. They began wondering whether there had been moments when you almost opened up but stopped because you weren't sure they would understand. And when they remembered one particular conversation, they realized there may have been a sentence you never finished. That unfinished moment is now the memory your soulmate cannot stop returning to. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. They remember your expression changing for just a second, the pause before you redirected the conversation, and the feeling that something important had almost been said. Back then, they allowed the moment to pass. Now they would give anything to know what was behind that pause. Was it something you wanted them to understand? Was it a truth you decided to keep private? Or was it simply one more moment when you chose not to force what needed to be recognized naturally? Your soulmate doesn't know yet, and that uncertainty is exactly what keeps pulling them back toward you. Because after everything they overheard, one thing has become impossible to deny: there are still chapters of you they haven't discovered. And instead of making them step away, that mystery is making them want to understand you more deeply. The biggest surprise is that they are no longer asking whether you are worth understanding. They already know the answer. Now they're asking whether they still have the opportunity to show you that they finally see what they once overlooked. And the next realization forming inside them could become the one that changes how they approach you from this moment forward. And now your soulmate has reached the realization they were secretly trying to avoid. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They understand that hearing someone defend you didn't create these feelings. It exposed feelings that were already there. That difference has shaken them more than anything else. If the conversation had simply changed their opinion about you, they could have moved on. But it didn't feel new. It felt familiar. Every word they overheard seemed to unlock something their heart had noticed long before their mind was willing to name it. They remembered the strange calm they sometimes felt around you. They remembered how naturally they searched for your reaction in certain moments, how your smallest words stayed with them longer than louder words from everyone else, and how they occasionally wondered what you were thinking even when you weren't around. Suddenly, those details stopped looking random. Your soulmate realized they had been emotionally collecting pieces of you without knowing why. And then came the thought that left them completely still. What if the reason nobody else had created the same impression wasn't because nobody else was good enough, but because what they experienced with you was simply different? Don't skip, because once that question appeared, they couldn't return to pretending this connection was ordinary. Then their mind returned to the person who defended you, and one hidden detail suddenly became impossible to overlook. That person hadn't described your character with hesitation. They spoke with certainty, as though they had seen enough to know exactly who you become when situations reveal someone's true nature. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate began wondering how many quiet choices you had made that they never witnessed. How many times had you helped without mentioning it? How many times had you protected someone's dignity instead of exposing their weakness? How many times had you carried disappointment without allowing it to change the way you treated innocent people? They realized that perhaps the most remarkable parts of you were precisely the parts you never advertised. And suddenly your soulmate felt almost embarrassed by how much importance they had once placed on appearances, timing, and assumptions. They had been studying the surface while your real character was revealing itself through consistency. That realization changed something fundamental. They no longer wanted to know whether you could impress them. They wanted to know you. The real you. The person behind the calmness, behind the restraint, behind those moments when your eyes seemed to say more than your words ever did. And that desire to understand you is becoming stronger every time they replay what happened. But there is one final twist your soulmate didn't expect. They are beginning to wonder what you discovered about them while they were busy trying to understand you. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. Because if you were truly paying attention all this time, then perhaps you noticed their hesitation. Perhaps you recognized the moments when they wanted to move closer but became uncertain. Perhaps you saw through the casual conversations and noticed emotions they weren't ready to admit even to themselves. That possibility leaves your soulmate with a completely different question now. They aren't only wondering what they should say to you. They're wondering how much you already know. And suddenly that unfinished conversation between you feels more important than ever. Your soulmate keeps returning to the exact second when you paused, almost said something, and then changed direction. Now they suspect that pause may not have been uncertainty at all. Maybe you had already understood something they are only beginning to understand now. And if that's true, then the biggest revelation hasn't happened yet. Because your soulmate is slowly realizing that while they thought this story began with an overheard conversation, something between you may have been unfolding quietly long before anyone said a single word about it. And suddenly, your soulmate understood why that unfinished moment with you had never completely disappeared from their memory. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They replayed it differently this time, not focusing on what you said, but on what happened in the silence afterward. There had been a look in your eyes, a brief hesitation, almost as if you knew saying one more sentence could change the meaning of everything between you. Back then, your soulmate dismissed it. Now, after hearing someone defend you and discovering how deeply you observe the people you care about, they began wondering whether you had already recognized the connection before they did. That possibility left them speechless. What if your silence wasn't confusion? What if you understood exactly what was happening but chose patience because you wanted something genuine to unfold naturally? Suddenly, your soulmate remembered other moments. The conversations that lasted longer than expected, the unexpected comfort they felt around you, the strange way both of you sometimes seemed to understand what the other meant without needing a full explanation. Those memories began connecting like pieces of a picture that had been incomplete for far too long. And the picture forming now is something your soulmate can no longer dismiss as ordinary. What they discovered next was even more surprising. Don't skip, because this is where the entire story turns around. Your soulmate realized that the person defending you had never mentioned your appearance, your achievements, or anything superficial. They defended your heart, your consistency, your ability to remain genuine when there was nothing to gain. And that distinction hit your soulmate deeply because those were exactly the qualities they secretly hoped to find in someone who truly mattered. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. For so long, they may have imagined that an extraordinary connection would arrive dramatically, with an unmistakable moment that explained everything immediately. But now they were considering another possibility. Perhaps the rarest connections don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they become visible through hundreds of tiny moments that only make sense when you finally look backward. A remembered sentence. A quiet gesture. A feeling of being understood. A person defending your character when you aren't even present. Suddenly, your soulmate realized that what left them speechless wasn't one shocking secret about you. It was the discovery that your smallest actions had been telling the same story all along, and they had only now learned how to read it. And now something has changed that cannot easily be reversed. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate is no longer asking themselves why you keep returning to their thoughts. They are beginning to understand the answer. You represent something they didn't realize they had been searching for, a connection that feels meaningful without needing constant proof. And that realization is pushing them toward one question they have avoided longer than any other. What happens if they finally stop pretending this means less than it does? They imagine speaking to you differently. Listening more carefully. Allowing themselves to acknowledge what they previously kept hidden behind hesitation. But just when they thought they had understood everything, another memory surfaced, one involving something you once said so casually that they almost forgot it. Now those words sound completely different. Your soulmate suddenly suspects that you may have given them a clue about your feelings long ago without ever directly revealing them. And when they connect those words to everything they overheard, one breathtaking possibility begins forming in their mind. Perhaps they weren't the only person quietly feeling this connection all along.